Been watching ball with my big old brain and think the tape needs some explaining. Studying the stats to understand it. Hey, yo. Talk data to me.
Welcome to episode 5 of Talk Data to Me. And look who we got in the house. None other than Mr. Ian Hartitz himself. Ian, we have done hundreds of shows together, and I have never hosted once. How does this feel?
It's awesome, man. I can say whatever I want. I can do whatever I want here. Maybe even we might have honestly hit 4 digits at this point, Mr. Dwain. So, no, this is awesome, man. Previous episodes have been great. And, as we've said, as much as we love the Fantasy Life show, sometimes with TV constraints and everything, we are not supposed to be going too much past 52 minutes. So let's see how long we can talk ball today, Mr. Dwain.
Yeah, so for folks, wondering what are we going to be talking about, we're going to be diving into fantasy football contradictions. We feel one way about a certain player or group of players, and maybe we prop them up or hold them down based on certain data points. And then you can look at another group of players that have the same exact traits, and we feel the opposite about them. Now, this isn't an indictment on anyone. This is honestly like this process of walking through our own human psyche and being like, why do we do these things? And maybe we should stop and think about it, because I know that we are prone to doing it as well. But if you guys have been enjoying this show so far, you know that I do have to embarrass the guests to start. And with Ian, number one, I get a behind the scenes look at Ian all the time. He is very fun on social media. He is an absolute grinder. You guys see all those things. Those things are all true. Those are truly what he is. Like, I've been to Ian's wedding. Like, he is the person that you see, the personality that you know on camera is actually the person in real life, which I think is really cool because that's not always the case. But the other thing I'll say that I think you often don't get enough credit for, Ian, beyond just being, that grinder and having that great personality you have, is just you really are a smart dude. And you know your stuff. And you know it really well, and you take a lot of pride in being prepared for shows, being prepared for your articles. So, and man, you're very efficient. I want to give you props. But we had a draft the other night, and you're so witty, and you're so your thought process is so quick about coming up with these funny things, and that's how you have these tweets that go viral all the time. But I was talking about one of our real-time sports drafts. If you guys haven't seen those, we put them up on the channel. If you haven't checked out real-time sports, the FantasyLife Championships over there, $300 entry. It's a great, great contest. You guys need to go check it out. If you're a little like, I don't know about it, just go look at my Twitter thread, look at Ian's. We've retweeted our draft boards. But we've been taking TreVeyon Henderson. Like, we're obviously big TreVeyon Henderson, if you want to call it a truther. Yes, that's what we are this year. And, to kind of tweet out the draft board, which typically I do, and then Ian retweets it, I was like, well, we got TreVeyon Henderson as our superhero as our hero running back, but you could call it superhero, since it is TreVeyon. And Ian's like, Super Hendo was right there, man. It was right there for you. And so this was my response. I actually went in and asked Perplexity, the AI engine, why can't I be more like Ian Hartitz? And this is what I had to say about you, Ian. It can be challenging to emulate someone like Ian Hartitz because of his traits: discipline, deep passion for football, consistent hard work, willingness to take risk, and genuinely entertaining persona are developed through years of dedication to his craft and personal growth. And man, I know this is AI, but those things are all true about you. The other thing people don't see behind the scenes, Ian always has motivational quotes that he's looking at. Ian is always looking for ways to get better. He's always looking for new things. Honestly, the Fantasy Life leadership team has to tell Ian no on things. Like, Ian's offered to take over editing duties on certain things. Ian's offered to do more projections. He's offered the staff actually has to protect him from himself, because this man would work completely nonstop. So, man, I just wanted to take a second to give a hat tip and just say that the robots actually love you. So if something does happen and the robot starts to take over, I think right now you're safe.
I have had my doubts about AI, not going to lie, but upon seeing how friendly it was to me, I must tip my own hat to Perplexity. But no, you're very kind as well, Dwayne. I can echo those sentiments. Where I've never ever heard anyone have a bad word to say about Mr. Dwayne. It was so much fun having you at the wedding in real life. Dwayne was one of the, I want to say, 7 or 8 people still out with us by the time it was about 3 a.m. and we were at the after party. So
I was tired.
Yeah, I was a little bit tired too at that point. So again, one hell of a time. But yeah, man, again, just certainly been a situation where football, since the time I could even remember thinking, period, 5 or 6 years old, been my favorite thing in the planet. And yeah, I do, you know, as much as we like to Drake and Josh around on Twitter from time to time, have, certainly have plenty of experience with the numbers and things like that. So I
Yeah.
still am trying to be what the kids would call a little bit book smart as well here. But at the end of the day, man, it is like fantasy football. And I know we're kind of getting into what some of our pet peeves with it. And, Dwayne, like not to again steal the intro with it, but I get so sick and tired in our industry of people just acting like they know everything and that they're not wrong, man. And so it's just one of these situations where whether it's the thread boys going, last year I gave you this, this, and this, or just people, again, only hyping up when they were good. Look, take your victory laps if you want to do so, okay? We should be promoting positivity here, and that's all fine. But can we just, look, man, Dwayne, if we face our grandma in fantasy football, I don't think it's like gambling where I don't think we'd win, 55% of the time or anything like that. But we're probably winning 70, 75%, maybe even 80% of the time. But you're still going to be losing, man, because it's fantasy football. We keep saying it. The ball isn't even round. It's basically 60 minutes of consecutive car crashes. It's okay to admit and just to realize that you are wrong on stuff. Quit trying to hide from it. It's really okay. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, so this is Ian, basically saying, hey, you've got to embrace variance. And even when you're wrong, guys, doesn't necessarily mean like your process was wrong. Like you may have had the right process around a player, but we're playing a game of probabilities. And you know that within a range of probabilities, you can be wrong on players. And I agree. That is a pet peeve for me as well. All the folks going around and just taking all their victory laps, but also not taking their lumps. Like, let's have a balanced approach. I'd put a tweet out a couple of months ago. I was like, well, I gave you Jaden Daniels and I gave you Malik Neighbors. I gave you Rashee Rice. I gave you so-and-so, but like, who gives an F? Like, I mean,
Right.
I also had stuff I missed on, I do appreciate that about you. And I will tell you, the analysts that I appreciate the most are the ones that are transparent about their process and about how they go about it. Now, you as the consumer, you may not always care about that, and you don't have to, like we hope you do. That's a big part of this whole show. Talk Data to me is teaching you how to fish. Also, we'll help you fillet some of the fish and serve them up, get them on the line for you as well. We love to talk about player takes. But the whole idea is like just really talking about how we go about doing the things we do. And I'm super excited about today's episode because I think it kind of digs into some of the areas where, we can have blind spots. We can be prone to, like I said earlier, giving a certain player props for something, but then not giving another player just like him props, or vice versa, holding them down. So let's dive into it. Great job leading us off with the pet peeves, but let's talk about fantasy football contradictions. We're going to go through our top 6 here, guys. Ian gets 3 and I get 3. We're going to kind of go back and forth on them. So let's start off with number 1, Ian. What is the biggest thing whenever you look at contradictions going on in the fantasy football space today? Go, take it away.
That ticks me off, Dwayne. It's the idea that he had too many touches last year, so I'm out. Because we have this weird thing, like there really is this bar where all of a sudden someone hits it and it's like, all right, well, next year they're just 100% going to get hurt. So I did try to, grind some of the data here. And that's what we are talking about on this show, right, Dwayne? We are talking about the data. And I looked at running backs with 400 plus touches in a season, including the playoffs, basically over the past, decade and a half, all the way back to 2010. We got Rashard Mendenhall and Ray Rice on the screen right now. And again, the average games they played in the next year are 12.7 and the median is 15. So yeah, not full 17, but guess what, Dwayne? Running backs in general shouldn't be expecting to play a full season anyway. So the fact that once you even start digging a little deeper, you see the big extremes. Christian McCaffrey with only 4 games in 2024, only 3 games in 2023. I mean, he's really skewing that a lot. So again, I do think there's an idea to guys being a little bit more injury prone after a heavy touch season and as players get older. Okay, I'm not saying that's not real, but it ends up being this binary. You're either injury prone, you either had too many touches, or you just didn't, man. So the fact that there is that, study that's been going around really for like a decade, Dwayne, I've made fun of it every step along the way. The curse of 370 touches. People have actually tried to put stock behind this. Well, Bijan had 365 last year, so he must just be perfectly fine. Thank God, Dwayne, Bijan didn't have 5 additional rush attempts at some point last year. Otherwise, we would have to.
We wouldn't be able to draft him.
So again, I recognize there is, an idea to this, and shout out to a Draft Sharks injury predictor. They do try to put like more of a percentage behind guys being more or less injury prone. But again, it's not this 10 out of 10 you're going to get hurt or 0 out of 10 you're not going to. And that's what does annoy me with it, man. And again, it's just the ways that it's presented sometimes. Sometimes people include playoffs, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't include the receptions. I've even seen these studies use Le'Veon Bell sitting out for a new contract as a reason why we shouldn't have, again, been chasing these guys with the high touch counts. So again, I think our ability to measure this could hopefully improve in future years. But for right now, man, it's just spare me this, man. The running back 1 averages fewer fantasy points per game than next year. So does the RB2, RB3, RB4, and RB5 on average, man. I ran the numbers. And again, it's just one of these things where, yeah, when you have that good of a season in the first place, it's really freaking hard to repeat, Dwain.
Yeah, and I think the big thing here that's the contradiction, right, is kind of the Bijan example. This is getting applied to a player like Saquon Barkley, but it's not getting applied to Bijan. And you just talked about the touch difference being like whatever it was, 5 different, So it's I agree with you. And this is one that's very strong. Like I was just at my home league dynasty draft 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting there having a conversation with some of my league mates. And they totally believe this thing. They believe in the curse of 370. And they sit there and they cite the numbers. They rattle them off. They're like, I don't know, man, this is a pretty strong trend. They start naming everybody. And again, I think you've taken it the right way. You've got to expand out, right? And anytime you hear a hard cut number like that, your antenna should go up. It's 370, right? Oh, but it's not 365. It's not 360. Are you, come on, like you're kidding, right? Like that's the immediate thing that gets me, whenever I see that sort of analysis. So these cutoffs, and look, we use arbitrary cutoffs at times in fantasy. I think the thing though is that we try to do, and I think that the analysts that I think are doing a really good job try to do is they call that out. They'll say, yes, guys, this is an arbitrary cutoff. I'm telling you that up front. I'm going to share with you some interesting data. And usually the conclusion is like, this is not necessarily something that's going to be sticky, but it's interesting. It's worth thinking about. So if I were looking at the curse of 370, if people were to position it as, it's kind of interesting to think about. We're not saying that it's going to be all the time, but like, here are the numbers. Like I would have way less of an issue with it. But when it gets positioned as kind of like this, this is one of the 10 commandments etched out, and we can't draft running backs that have had this many carries. I have a problem with it. And I think the other really cool thing you did is just looking at the running back 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they all went down. Fantasy points per game.
The RB4 went down more than the RB1. So should we just be fading automatically whoever finished as the RB4? Of course not. But it just is one of those things, Dwayne. We're again 482 touches for Saquon last year. That is a lot. If you want to go ahead and rank Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan ahead of him and just have that as part of your process, so be it. But I sincerely think that if Saquon had gotten, maybe sprained his MCL on the first snap of the Rams game and finished under 400 touches, people all of a sudden weren't worried about this. And I just cannot get behind that logic.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So we'll go to number 2 here. So I get number 2, and it's this idea that if you can't pass protect, you're not on the field. That means no fantasy points for you. So there's really 2 parts to this one. The first part of it is that this just really isn't true. So I think we're going to start there. And I just want to show people, number 1, like what fantasy points are coming from these snaps for these players, and to talk a little bit about what we mean by the situations where you would most likely be on the field for pass pro as a running back. And you know this, Ian, you play college football, but when you get to 3rd and 6, 4th and 6, 3rd and 7, you pretty much know the offense has to pass. The offense has lost its element of surprise. They may try to throw a wrinkle in there like a screen pass or some sort of trickery that tries to kind of sucker punch the defense. But this is the time when the defense is going to be more likely to load up, and they're going to say, we're going to make you get the ball out of your hands quickly because we don't want to give you time to throw it past the sticks. And what does that mean? The running back then has to stay in to block. And so what I've done, guys, is I've just put the data together for you. And this is the last 5 years. And if you look at those situations where coaches are most likely to put their pass pro running backs on the field because they know they're going to be facing a blitz, it's 0.21 fantasy points per snap. It's the lowest value. It's the least valuable snap that's available to a running back from a fantasy point standpoint when we think about all the things.
It's still a huge
sample,
Dwayne.
Yeah, it's a big sample. I mean, if you look at it, it's too small for me right now to see, but it's like 25,287 because these boxes are shrunk on my screen. But yeah, it's a big sample. Now you can also argue, well, there are a lot of those snaps, so you still are picking up some fantasy points. So we're not saying you don't get anything. We would rather have the running backs that get everything. Here's the problem, guys. There's like 6 of those every year. That's it. We get like 6 backs that basically just don't ever leave the field. They play long down a distance. They play the 2-minute offense. They play all of those things. But you can see here, if we get rid of long down a distance and we just look at third downs, because that's another thing you hear. Oh, if you don't get the third down snaps, you don't score fantasy points. It's slightly better, 0.25. Then we look at the 2-minute offense, right? So those are situations where the defense is often not blitzing. Why? They just don't want to give up a score before half. They don't want to give up a score at the end of the game that now allows this offense to get back into it. And that is at 0.28. So you're like, oh, 0.28 versus 0.21. Well, that's a 33% difference, guys, on a per snap basis. But here's where it really gets important. Compare that to 1st and 10, okay? 0.31 fantasy points per game. Guess what a defense is going to really struggle to do on 1st down, except there are outlier cases? Blitz. Why? Because they don't know what the offense is going to do. It's 1st and 10. The element of surprise is completely in the hands of the offense for the most part. And that means guys like RJ Harvey can be on the field in these situations. RJ Harvey can also be on the field in the 2-minute offense because he's not really going to be picking up blitzes. In those scenarios, if the defense does decide to blitz, guess what they're doing? The quarterback's expected to pick up the hot read, which is often RJ Harvey slipping out of the backfield, and he gets the target. If we keep going down, if you look at the 2nd down and 6, so again, that's a down where the offense is still in control. The defense has to respect everything. They have to respect the run. They have to respect the pass play. And you see that's where 0.41 fantasy points per snap. Those are snaps that a guy like RJ Harvey that gets kind of banged on for not being out there. In the 2-minute offense, he's going to be out there. And then the final one, like, guys, the one that matters the most, and it's hard to predict year over year, but it's 1.21 fantasy points per game when you're on the field inside the 5-yard line. It makes sense because that's when you get your chance to score touchdowns. So, Ian, let me know your thoughts here.
Yeah, man, I think the biggest part of this is just we want more opportunity, obviously. We want to be on the field every single snap. It's not realistic, man. It doesn't happen. And I know we're talking running backs, but this sort of idea has made me push back on some of the Jaden Reed discourse as well. Everyone, oh my gosh, we need these 12 personnel snaps. I would love for him to have more overall routes too. Okay, we want as many as possible. But when you look at it, Romeo Doubs, he gets 4 or 5 extra routes per game from that. Okay, we're talking about a potential extra 1 target per game, which again, over the course of 17 games does add up, and that would be cool. But look, it's not like this is taking, or a 3rd down snap is taking someone from being a complete fantasy juggernaut to being an effing loser that we can't trust at all. So that's where I kind of fall with the whole RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins situation. We're like, yeah, if Harvey could have this 80, 90% snap roll, of course that would be more ideal. But just because Dobbins is going to be shaving off a few snaps, and as you've proven now, snaps that really we don't need to worry about as much as usual, that's the big thing for me. So honestly, Harvey, Dobbins, look, man, we've liked both of them. And it's a situation where Dobbins, I think, going to round 8 or 9, really is in that sweet spot of the draft for zero or hero RB drafters. So Harvey versus Dobbins, I think the answer is yes. And again, you've gone a long way here to go ahead and prove that we don't need to be completely losing our minds over a situation that, again, doesn't produce all that many fantasy points in the first place.
Yeah, and just real quick, guys, like to show you, like, this is the utilization from last year. I cut it to 250 snaps for these players. But look at this. We've sorted by fantasy points per game. Joe Mixon had 15% of his team's long down and distance snaps. Did he care? No. 19.2 fantasy points per game. Okay. Derrick Henry, 9%. He scored 18.9 fantasy points per game. Achane, 50%, 18.4. Josh Jacobs, 51%, 18.1. James Cook only got 8% of them, scored 17.6 fantasy points per game. James Conner, 25%. Kenneth Walker, 27%. Half the guys that were in the top 12 running backs in fantasy did not play in the pass pro stuff. So it's just not this huge driver ultimately for fantasy success. Like, I can switch it over to 2023 and you guys are going to see the same thing. I think in this year, we end up with 7 guys instead of 6 that were in the top 12 that were over 50%. I mean, look at it. Kamara's right there at 52, but Mostert, 38%. Brees Hall, 42%. Achane, 34%. Isaiah Pacheco, only 18%. Jonathan Taylor, only 48%. And these guys all still ended up in your top 12. Again, yes, we would love to be getting those snaps. We want the players that are out there all the time. The problem is, you guys are holding that against players that you could draft in rounds 5, 6, and 7 over on ESPN. At that point, you should let it go. You know why? Because you're no longer most likely drafting guys that are getting all the snaps. Those guys went in the first 2 rounds of your fantasy draft. Now, an injury to a teammate will open that up for someone this year that we don't know. It's going to open it up for a couple of people. But to me, it's really funny because you know what, Ian? Last year, like if we go back to 2024, and we look at Chase Brown like is a really good example. And like I'm gonna like narrow this down to like when Chase Brown really like just took over this backfield. I mean, you can see even with him, he's sitting at 52%. It's not like he's getting 80% of the long down and distance work, but the thing he is getting, look at that, 94%, of that 2-minute offense. And again, you don't have to have the 2-minute offense to be successful either. You can see that. The point being, guys, you're taking Chase Brown in round 2. And the Bengals brought in Samaje Perine probably to play long down and distance snaps, and no one cares. It's like none of you even care. When we get to RJ Harvey, who you get to take in round 6 or 7 in some of these leagues, round 5 and sharper leagues, everybody's like, oh my God, I can't take RJ Harvey. He's not going to be on the field for pass down. So I would say that is my big number 2.
Dwayne, real quick though, done. Devon Achane just led all running backs in fantasy points from receiving. How many total pass blocking snaps do you think he played last year in 17 games?
15.
19. That's what I'm saying. This doesn't happen that often. Jahmyr Gibbs averaged 2.7 pass blocking snaps per game out there. Okay. So yeah, if you are the world's single worst pass protector and it's so bad that your coach just refuses to put you on the field, period. Okay. That's going to be a problem. But dude, running backs, again, it's one of these things where I remember I was getting roasted on a real life, ball knowing Twitter for good reason. I was, making it a little more simple than it is. But think about it. A running back who goes out in the flat, okay? Ideally, or you don't normally, someone's going to cover him, okay? Like you're accounting for that player by running a pass route. So why would you have Devon Achane stepping up into the A gap to try to block a linebacker when he could otherwise release? And guess what? If no one covers him, now you have an explosive play going down the sideline. So again, smart coaches are going to be kind of working around this in the first place. And there are
player skill sets, man. And if you're in the 2-minute offense, I want the guy, because the defense is essentially in that 2-minute drill, the defense, you know what they're saying? Throw the ball to your running back. Like they literally want you to check it down. That's what their coverage is trying to dictate. So why not have the dude out there that might turn the 5-yard reception into 12 yards and a first down, and they get out of bounds and keep the clock going, versus the guy that might be able to block but can only get 7 yards on that play and stop the clock. So the coaches know this stuff.
Yeah. Again, there's a balance to be had, and Dwayne and I enjoyed watching all the Travion Henderson pass pro highlights throughout the spring as well. So it's cool. It's an important piece of the game, but again, very much overstated. And to your point, it's one of those things that we really forget about for most players overall. We don't even consider it. It's only in a situation like Harvey where someone brings it up that, again, it becomes this big deal. That, again, is a nothing burger for everyone else.
All right, Ian, let's go to the third one. You've got one here, and it's around quarterbacks, and I know it's around someone near and dear to your heart. So let the people have it. Number 3 contradiction in fantasy football.
The Justin Fields special. He sucks at throwing, so he can't be a good fantasy QB. Now, first of all, Justin Fields, is he a good thrower? No. Is Trevor Lawrence a better passer than him? Yes. Justin Fields has averaged a higher career yards per attempt than Trevor Lawrence. He's actually only 0.1 behind Kyler Murray at this point, only 0.3 behind Justin Herbert. So I do think sometimes just aesthetically and what we see sometimes distracts us from the reality that, guess what? At the end of the day, we don't get style points in fantasy football. We'll take the passing yards however we can get them. Sacks and stuff go into it. Again, I'm not trying to make this that Justin Fields is actually a good passer argument. But look, Dwayne, my point is over here, he doesn't need to be, because in the last freaking 10, 11 years, okay, going back to 2014, we've had 31 quarterbacks rack up at least 100 carries in a season. Now, per game fantasy numbers, I'm not even doing that dickhead move where you just take guys with 100 plus carries and they were healthy enough to play 17 games. Look at their overall ranks. Per game basis, 13 of those 31 quarterbacks, 42% finished as top 3 fantasy quarterbacks. 20 of them, 65% finished as top 6 fantasy quarterbacks. Only 3, Dwain. So 90% of these guys still managed to finish inside the top 12. And honestly, with 2018 Lamar Jackson qualifying, that's even skewed because he was getting impacted from basically backing up or playing a few snaps per game with Joe Flacco for the first half of that season. So basically, guys, 29 of 31 quarterbacks have produced QB1 value when they have run the ball at least 100 times this year. And hey, don't even take my word for it. Take Dwain and Matthew Friedman's projections for it. We have Justin Fields at 140 right now, the second most in the entire NFL. So the only 2 guys who didn't hit were 2014 Colin Kaepernick and 2020 Cam Newton. And dude, Cam threw like 11 touchdowns that year and still finished, I think, as the QB 17. So it just goes to show you how much of a freaking drug this rushing quarterback can be in fantasy football. And I know that we've known this for years, you know, Rich Rebar, Konami code, late round quarterback, like this has been the basis of everything. But man, Tim Tebow, Dwain, one of the worst throwing quarterbacks in NFL history. Okay, the Anthony Richardson stats are right there with him. Tim Tebow was a fantasy QB8 during that stretch run in 2011 where he was allowed to take over. Taysom Hill, who is a tight end, who hilariously got put in a quarterback for stretches, QB6 and QB7 in fantasy during the 2020 and 2021 season. So yes, if you are so bad at quarterback that it costs you your job, a la Anthony Richardson last year, that can be the concern, okay? But at the same time, man, just Justin Fields, we saw him last night, Dwayne. We ended up going with Drake May, which is fine because he runs the ball as well. But there is a point where I understand not using a top 80 or a top 90 pick on Justin Fields. But guys, Dwayne and I have been in these drafts. This dude falls until, honestly, QB 15, QB 16.
And it's because of the preseason stuff, guys. Like he was consistently like around 9-10 guy, and now he's falling into 12 and 13. And I think that makes it even that much easier to embrace him. The one question, you know, and a little bit of pushback that I would give on this, Ian, I don't push back on any of the numbers you stated because they're all true. I do think that the bar, and this goes for every quarterback, the bar that we're shooting for has now changed. So the way I look at this is the Tim Tebow, the Taysom Hills even, whenever they've started at quarterback, Justin Fields, you know, fits in this. I'm not going to put Cam Newton in here. I think he actually had some really good passing years, so I think he's above that. But some of these guys that we know really were more limited to just what they can do on the ground, limited as passers. I do agree they can help you offset the pocket passers, because if we go back and we look at the history of fantasy, the thing that used to really throw people off is what were they chasing every year? The pocket passer from the year before that spiked in their touchdowns per attempt. Tom Brady, you know, whenever he set all those records with Randy Moss, took a step down. Peyton Manning, you know, went absolutely berserk a couple of years. Aaron Rodgers had a nutso year. Patrick Mahomes has had a couple of nutso years. And guess what? Those guys, while they all have different kind of like how much they can add on the ground profile. Like Patrick can actually do a little. I don't want to trigger you here though with what he does at the sideline. But I think the difference now is what you can expect Justin Fields to do is potentially offset like someone, like if someone's taking Baker Mayfield at QB6, I think you should feel pretty confident about you can wait and draft Justin Fields. And as long as he's on the field, he's got a better shot of paying off his ADP than Baker. But because the quarterback landscape has shifted so much, and now we have these dual threat aliens that truly can do both.
Yeah.
With Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels adds to the mix. Lamar Jackson, you guys obviously know. And then Jalen Hurts is kind of a tweener, you know, but we have seen some really good passing years from him as well. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and include him in that group. So what I don't think Justin Fields gives you the ability to do is match those guys. But at the same time, I don't think there's many other names on the list below that could do it either. I slightly prefer Caleb Williams and some of these guys that I think might be able to throw for 4,200 yards and rush for 500. But I do agree. But I think it was a bigger cheat code like 6 years ago before we had these elite dual threats, because it was like all you really needed to do was offset the fact that people were overdrafting the guy that threw a lot of touchdowns the year before.
And I'm not going to lie, I've watched every dropback that Fields had with the Jets this preseason. They weren't pretty, okay? We've seen the training camp reports. It's like Justin Fields and Jalen Wright were the only two players in the NFL with a bad training camp. But again, guys, as much as Fields hasn't been a good passer on bad Bears offenses, on a Steelers team last year that wasn't doing him a ton of favors, I mean, last 3 years, QB5, QB11, and QB8 in terms of fantasy points per game. So I hear you where I would not want to be using this, top 10 QB pick on someone like Fields when we do have to wonder, like, does he actually have that 23 fantasy point per game, best case upside? But we don't have to in more drafts than not. We're already looking at, handcuff running backs and wide receivers outside the top 50 at that point. So at that price tag, man, very much in on some Justin Fields there. So just maybe could we add a second receiver in New York? I mean, they got your guy Alan Lazard, Dwayne, who I know you just love, and you've
No, it's Josh Reynolds is the starter, man. Josh Reynolds, that's the wide receiver too. Malachi Corley cut already. Oh yeah, it's rough. It's rough. So maybe Mason Taylor can be something, man. Maybe Mason Taylor. I tell you what, as far as I'm concerned, the wide receiver two to start the year in New York is Breece Hall, but that's another topic. So let's move on to number 4, which comes back to me. And I think one of these big things that I notice a lot is these part-time contingency upside backs. Okay. And I'm just gonna, Ian's better at memes than me, but I'm gonna throw one over here for you guys. And it's got the cool guy checking in and checking in on the lady, says Jordan Mason's a great contingency bet. Oh, you're so sweet. And then, you kind of got the nerdy guy coming in. David Montgomery's a great contingency bet. Human resources. It's just, it's funny. And we're seeing Jordan Mason in the drafts that you and I have done, Ian, over the last couple of nights, jumping past David Montgomery.
That's what's crazy.
David Montgomery is a guy that I feel like Chris Collinsworth. Now, here's a guy, that basically scores 10 to 12 touchdowns every year. And he's been a really good player. And the contingency upside is actually massive, guys. I mean, we've actually seen examples of this already. So I'm going to show you guys off the utilization report, which you can get over at fantasylife.com. Yeah. 20% off. Use code Ian because Ian's our guest today. Use code Ian to get that 20% off. But I've got David Montgomery, and I went back to the 2 games where Jahmyr Gibbs had that hamstring issue in his rookie season. Montgomery scored 34.1 and 20.9 fantasy points in those games. It's a great offense, guys. Yes, has the interior offensive line gone through some changes? Yeah, but we're not holding that against Jahmyr Gibbs, but we're going to hold it against David Montgomery. Like, that's the other thing I've actually heard. They're like, yeah, but for Monty, man, the offensive line is bad. I'm like, okay, now you got to stop, because if you're going to do that, you also have to hold that against Jahmyr Gibbs. So when I look at Monty, he's just one of these players, and you and I have actually found ourselves gravitating to him because we play on real-time sports. It's very running back heavy, guys. Yeah. And this guy falls in around 7. People are completely ignoring him. He goes behind, he goes behind Charbonnet. I'm sorry. That is just absolutely, in my opinion, freaking insane. So just real quick here, whenever we talk about David Montgomery, oh, that was bad. Look at me just sharing the show sheet. Like,
there we go. We're prepared.
No one cares, but I am prepared. But I'm just going to let you guys watch me and Ian talk here. But I'm just going to give you guys some numbers on Montgomery. 2024, 15.1 fantasy points per game. That's running back 16. 2023, 14.5 fantasy points per game. That's running back 16. I already talked about the 2 games where he exploded without Jahmyr Gibbs. If we look at Jordan Mason in 2024, he scored 15.7 fantasy points per game. These are the same player, and I like both of them. But no one talks about the contingency upside of David Montgomery. And I think that that's funny. And I think the reason why, and I actually understand this partially, is because Jahmyr Gibbs is ahead of David Montgomery. And no one wants to imagine a world where Jahmyr Gibbs missed time. And I can actually be in alignment with you guys on that. I just want to see Jahmyr Gibbs balling out, playing football, and just scoring a lot of fantasy points. But the bottom line is he can get hurt. Now, I get it. Mason is playing with another running back that's old and Aaron Jones, who's got a pretty long track record of getting hurt. So on that part, I'm not going to argue, but it's just funny to me that we do dismiss, and we talk all the time about how unpredictable injuries really are, and yet we want to dismiss it for Monty. So I've got one more example here, Ian, and if you've got one, feel welcome to throw it in, but I think the other one is Ramondre Stevenson versus J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
Dobbins is climbing.
Harris now too.
Yes, Najee Harris is another good one. J.K. Dobbins is climbing up draft boards right now, guys. He went in round 8 last night on Real Time Sports. When Ian and I first started drafting these, we were getting J.K. Dobbins in round 10 and 11. And I'm not saying Dobbins shouldn't climb. I'm not saying he shouldn't even be a round 9 pick. But he's going, you have Ramondre Stevenson completely falling down the board. And so to me, there's a bit of market overconfidence that RJ Harvey, back to the pass pro thing, stinks and is not going to be able to be on the field that much versus Trevion Henderson is just taking over everything. Now, don't get me wrong. Me and you we have heavy loads of Trevion Henderson bags. We want him to take over everything. But we also realize that like Ramondre Stevens is a pretty good player, and we have in our projections them really splitting the role. And we still like Trevion, even then, because of how good he is as what he could do out of the backfield as a receiver. But guys, listen to this. Mondre in 2024, in his full time, whenever he played a full-time role in 8 games, he averaged 15.4 fantasy points per game. That's the numbers we just gave for David Montgomery. Okay. In 2023, he averaged 13.4 in healthy contests. And then in 2022, he averaged 16.4 points per game in his healthy games. So essentially, we've got a running back that's been, somewhere between 13 and 16 fantasy points per game. 2 of the last 3 seasons over 15 in his healthy contests. I mean, and we're talking about an offense, Ian, that we don't know what's going to happen with Stephon Diggs. We like Kyle Williams, but and it's Josh McDaniels, another guy that's willing to design stuff for his running backs. Sean Payton, I give a hat tip to. Sean Payton, I get it. He's the GOAT. He's put so many, we've seen him do it so many times where he puts 2 running backs in the top 24 or 2 running backs in the top 36 to a lesser degree here. But man, when I look at this offense, I think, is there a world where really it's just Mondre and Trevion Henderson getting a lot of work? And again, there's contingency upside that we don't want to admit with Ramondre Stevenson. And I think the reason why is we're all so excited about Trevion Henderson like we are Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't want to imagine a world where Trevion Henderson gets hurt. But Ramondre Stevenson probably has standalone value, and he has massive contingency upside. And Human Resources says if you say J.K. Dobbins, you get a nice little wink back at you. But if you say Ramondre Stevenson, they're calling HR.
And I'm not sure if Najee can wink at this point, but he is in play for that same exact thing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Hampton and Najee likely split back, and then it's going to be a situation where, God forbid, something happens to Hampton. Again, Najee would be taken over in a hurry. So I really just joined the slight discrepancy between Montgomery and Jordan Mason is absolutely killing me in some of these drafts. Like I have gotten so much Mason and best ball and then a lot of personal redrafts. I don't think you and me have gotten them one time though, because I'm not going to pay up to round 6 or 7 for this dude when he pretty much is the exact same thing as Monty, but we're not getting a discount on that. Monty is going later than him sometimes. That's not the case in home leagues, man. Home leagues, it's Yahoo 55 versus pick 93, Monty versus Mason. Sleepers.
And Monty's already proven he can thrive in a part-time role.
Yeah, and we hope the Vikings offense, they added some interior offensive linemen. I do think J.J. McCarthy will be good. We hope they can be as good as the Lions. We've already seen that with Monty. So, again, I think people are hopeful. We got the new OC in Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs is amazing. Maybe they do slide it a little bit more towards, Monty. But that said, man, we just always want these youngins to become a bigger thing. At the end of the day, Monty, James Conner, and Ramondre Stevenson, all these guys have inked big money deals with the current GM on their team within the last 12. I think for Stevenson, it was more like 18 months. So again, would be cool, for you, Dwain, if you could sit here doing your utilization report on Mondays and just say, oh yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, 100% snaps, and not have to worry about any of these committees. But that's not the way it goes. And, I think you're spot on too, where we got to remember, as much as Gibbs, we saw it down the stretch, literally the overall RB1 in fantasy if Monty misses any time. And he's pretty close even when Monty is out there playing. But the inverse isn't quite true, man. But God forbid, Gibbs wins the lottery, says, I'm going to take this year off in football. Dave Montgomery probably going right next to Josh Jacobs at the lowest.
Yeah, I think he's a top 12 running back in that scenario. I think you might make an argument over him for Josh Jacobs. But I agree, right there in that tier. And guys, we're not trying to go Freeman wet blanket on you here. We are believers in Jahmyr Gibbs. I've got Jahmyr Gibbs as my running back too. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs does take away a little bit of Monty's workload this year. And we've even seen it in practice. Historically, the first reps in practice, and this doesn't always mean everything, have gone to Monty. Now they're going to Jahmyr Gibbs. I could see Jahmyr Gibbs picking up 5 to 10% extra of the rushing, attempts. And that's the risk with Monty where he goes, but it doesn't change the fact that he still has this contingency upside. It also doesn't change the fact that we don't know for sure what Jordan Mason's role is going to be. If I had to make a guess, I feel better about what Monty's role is going to be in week 1 than what Jordan Mason's is going to be. Yeah. Now, it could be the same. Jordan Mason could be ahead. Monty could be ahead. But if I had to choose, Girl Scout sauntering to the door says, hey, switchblade to your throat, man. You better tell me, who's it going to be, Monty or Jordan Mason in week 1 that has a bigger workload? Like, I'm going Monty. With my life on the line, I'm going Monty. So enough on that one. Really good stuff, though, back and forth. And I love the Najee call out as well. So, yeah. All right, Ian, we got another one. I really love this one because I think this is one that honestly is not just a fantasy analyst thing and not just a draft bro thing, thinking, hypothetical draft and, contingency upside. Like, this is just a straight up football fan. He's slow and he's dust. Explain yourself again.
Yeah, we've seen this twice now over the past 2 years. Austin Eckler had the 13-mile-per-hour run against the Packers when he was still on the Chargers. It looked horrible. I get it, okay? And people mocked him and this and that. However, guys, had a high ankle sprain, I think, in week 1, was trying to play through it. And why do we only look at a guy's slowest runs? Austin Eckler, that very same season, had a higher top speed than Josh Jacobs. Yet I did not hear a single person slandering Josh Jacobs for being slower than Austin Eckler. And now we're seeing the same thing this last season. J.K. Dobbins rips off like a 60-yard run against the Raiders and gets caught from behind. Basically lost steam, wasn't able to keep on going. He still had a faster top speed in terms of next-gen stats miles per hour than Travis Etienne, then Kyron Williams last year. And I don't hear that being held against them. You know why it's not being held against them, Dwayne? Because your top speed on a 40-yard dash straightaway doesn't freaking matter, okay? Kudos to the Chase Browns of the world who are just that fast when absolutely no one is in front of them, all right? That screen pass he took in the house as a rookie, feeding families, and he had a good end of last season. But, man, if you have to go through and just literally try to start, assigning combine value to running backs, we've done in the past. I'm sure you've looked at it, Dwayne. Jumps and agility are so much more important than what your straight line 40-yard dash is going to be. So 10-yard burst, I can get behind that, but there's just so few situations in the first place where you get that clean runway hole and you don't have to make anyone miss. So the fact that we are pretty much arbitrarily, I would say, dinging select guys like Austin Eckler and J.K. Dobbins for this, I just don't buy into it, man, because again, we've seen time and time again, top speed doesn't really matter. Dwayne, last year, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, they had faster top speeds than Bucky Irving. Are they better running backs now? Should we be penalizing Bucky for that? Of course not. So again, it's just one of these spots where
that's one no one would want to hear.
Yeah,
everyone would put their head in the sand if you tweet. You should tweet that. That's a really. I think the interesting thing here that people need to think about as well, and I think this is an area where when you get to talking about the work that people like Matt Waldman do, the work that Thor Nystrom does at FantasyLife, all the folks that are really grinding the film out there. Lance Zierlein is another guy that puts all of his work out there, is completely transparent. I've put his work into the rookie supermodel because he does have it all out there and it's not paywalled. These other people are transparent as well, but they have it behind a paywall. So it's not, I don't want to give it away in something that I'm giving to you guys. I would love to get multiple people on board, and we have the film grade be based on a composite, across multiple guys that we think are really good at film. So working through that, that's a side note. But I think the thing that comes to my mind here is, number one, we don't see speed translate to explosive rush rate, which are carries of 10 plus yards or more. Now, it can translate to your breakaway runs, right? So those are whenever you're really hitting those 20 plus yarders. But there's so few of those in the year. And again, it's not a super strong correlation. Of course, we want running backs that could break a long touchdown from anywhere. But really, the most important thing is can they break the 10-yard runs? Can they get the chunk plays? And when you think about a guy like J.K. Dobbins, I think he's a perfect example of that. This is a guy where speed isn't everything. It's understanding how to read the blocks in front of you. It's understanding how to manipulate the linebackers on the other side of the blocks, like Mr. Ian Hartitz trying to rip your head off in college. You want to get Ian to take the wrong step, and then you want to hit the hole that you want. And honestly, I think that's such a bigger driver to gaining yards than someone's speed. Now, if someone can do what I just said, and they also have that elite burst like a Jahmyr Gibbs, now you're really cooking with gas. The thing is, there's like 3 of those. Saquon Barkley's one of them. Bijan Robinson is another one of them. But like after that, like we hope CMC still has that gear. He's protected by his pass catching.
Even Bijan, though, Dwayne, like this is held against Najee Harris a lot too, right? Everyone's going, oh, Najee Harris has never broken a run over 40 yards. All right, that's making its rounds. Neither is Bijan. And also, guess what? Neither is Alvin Kamara during the time that Najee Harris has been in the NFL. So look, Kamara and Bijan, I get it. They're more explosive players than Najee. But again, it's just one of these things where James Conner and J.K. Dobbins were the RB3 and RB4 in explosive run rate last year. All right. So it's just one of these things, man. J.K. Dobbins had as many 30-plus yard runs as Jahmyr Gibbs. That happened.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, I think being a running back, like processing information, Arian Foster was not fast. Arian Foster was a beast. I grew up watching Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith was not fast. He had a really good offensive line, but he also manipulated the linebackers and the second layer defenders like nobody's business. Yeah. And he would outrun angles by setting things up. And Bucky Irving is like this. You talked about him. He doesn't have elite top end speed either. He can make the first guy miss. And then he's also really good at just setting up defenders. I think Dylan Sampson is really interesting in this area. We'll see how his vision ends up working out, but he's shown an ability to manipulate defenders on the other side. He's got some solid speed, but then like make that next guy miss, and he's into the secondary. I'm really interested to see how he plays out this year. So,
and this is Matt Waldman 101. Am I right? I mean, that's why he's pushing back on someone like Bashaw Tootin. Like, yeah, we want running backs to be as big and fast as possible. That's cool, but you can't just completely look at that and ignore everything else.
That's right. Yeah. And again, like I like Bashaw Tootin. I think he's worth the bet because it's an ambiguous backfield in Jacksonville. We know that that's a profitable situation. We've got trade rumors swirling around Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. We've got James Gladstone coming in and taking in this guy. Yeah, it was round 4, guys, but with how deep this draft class was, you could argue it was more like a round 3 pick. They took him early in round 4. So we're not saying there's not things to like about Tootin, but yes, to Matt Waldman's point, a lot of this is about being able to translate what's happening in front of you in real time and then converting and then using your actual physical attributes to convert that into actual yards, which guess what, guys, equals fantasy points. So it really all comes full circle back to fantasy. So we're going to jump into number 6 here, and we're going to have some bonus stuff because Ian and I are running ahead schedule. I don't know how. We never run ahead of schedule, but we are. And we've got these shows set up to be able to go a little bit longer, so we will. Mine is late season contingent upside, right? And the way we think about it. And I am guilty of this. Number one, I talk about rookies all the time. Ian, you talk about rookies. Everyone, like JJ Zachariason, very sharp people. Pat Carrain, Ben Gretsch. We've got a lot of people that talk about the late season value you get out of these rookies and how they can help you win your league. But I just wanted to go back and really put that to the test. We're not debating that today. We agree with that. You and I are both on board with that. We put up a draft, and we'll talk about it more in a minute, that Ian and I did a couple of nights ago. I mean, we got pounded. Oh my God, I guess all you do is draft rookies. You guys are a bunch of idiots, man. Maybe we are. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But like what I really wanted to show here today is how much we dismiss the fact that veterans can also do the same thing we're talking about with rookies. Okay. Ooh. So let's look at Brian Thomas Jr. This is the last 6 games of last season, guys. Okay. Brian Thomas Jr. was absolutely bananas. He scored 24 fantasy points per game, but look at Devontae Adams, the old washed Devontae Adams, 22.8 fantasy points per game. And people are going to say, well, look at that, man. Brian Thomas still beat him. Yeah, you're right. You know what Brian Thomas also had happen? He had Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk get hurt. Devontae Adams was still battling Garrett Wilson and still nearly matched this young buck, Brian Thomas Jr. So again, Brian Thomas Jr. is a great example of what a rookie can do for you late in the year, but let's not act like he didn't have some things also go his way. Now, you could also
It's not
argue
anti-rookie. It's just saying, look what these veterans can do too.
Exactly. And we shouldn't dismiss it. So let's look at case 2 below. Ladd McConkey, 19.2 fantasy points per game down that stretch. Ian and I have talked about him a lot. We love him. One of our favorite picks right now in round 3. When we're not taking Trevion Henderson, we probably needed to take a little more Ladd McConkey. But let's look at Mike Evans. And this is the human resources thing. Ladd McConkey scored 19.2 fantasy points per game down the stretch. Oh, you're sweet. Mike Evans scored 21.2. Human resources. Like, someone get this man out of my office. Now, Mike Evans, very similar to Brian Thomas, the young player, also had something happen for him. Chris Godwin got hurt and was out. Mike Evans was hurt, and then he came back healthy, and really all he had to deal with was Cade Otton, and then we had McMillan, and McMillan was really more of the big play threat. So what did they do with Mike Evans during that period, Ian? They let him run a more diverse route tree. He went from being this 14 average depth of target guy to being the guy that was getting to run the slants, the guy that was moving into the slot, the guy getting to run the digs. And when we've seen that happen for a guy like George Pickens as well. Some of these archetypes that, because they have other teammates that can do certain things they don't need to, there are certain players that are so good once you let them do it. It's not that they can't. It's just that they have other teammates that are playing those roles in the season. And so when you look at Mike Evans, 21.2 fantasy points per game to finish out your year. Basically, if you had Bucks, you were loving it last year. One last example. We love Malik Neighbors. This one's hilarious, though. Malik Neighbors scored 19.1 fantasy points per game. If I were to tell you guys, Keenan Allen, old fatty, washed up, bad quarterback, bad scheme, everything sucks. Keenan Allen scored 18.3 fantasy points per game over the last 6 games last year. So my point here is that, yes, we love the rookies, and I do think there's an argument for the rookies potentially having a clearer path to improving. But what you have to remember is the rookies are improving because they're learning on the fly, and then they sometimes get increased playing time in the second half of the year, and it equals more points. But the veterans could still have other things breaking their way. Brian Thomas Jr. had things break his way. So did Mike Evans. Devontae Adams didn't have things break his way. Neither did Ladd McConkey, right? Malik Neighbors didn't have things break his way. Neither did Keenan Allen. So, I mean, we can say that these guys all got there in different ways, but the point being, these veterans that have been really good for a long time, they basically match these rookies that we talk about all the time.
And it's one of these things where I was on the CBS Beyond the Box Score pod, which is awesome. Jacob Gibbs, Dan, they do great work. You guys should definitely check them out. But man, like someone's talking up Colson Loveland as a sleeper. Dwayne, we love Colson Loveland, not as much as Tyler Warren, but I certainly see the path there. And it was just 5 straight minutes of Colson Loveland propaganda. No one even mentioned Cole Kmet. So I was like, hey guys, just saying, Cole Kmet, $50 million. Could this be a little bit of a Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox situation? And the response I got back was, well, we're playing for December. And it's like, well, I don't think we can just completely dismiss any usage concern with we're playing for December, Dwayne. You will ideally win your December games, of course, but winning in September is also pretty cool, okay? An awesome stat from the Athletics, Jake Seeley, basically pointing out that fantasy teams that start 3-1 or 4-0, just like NFL teams, I mean, your probability of making the playoffs is really freaking high, man. So I think sometimes we do get a little rookie obsessed and just really ignore some of these red flags where, man, we got to try to win these weeks 1, 2, 3 matchups, man. I remember you told me that last year as well, where I think I fell into that trap a little bit. And that's kind of the point of this whole show. Like, you and me aren't perfect, obviously, by trying to avoid these landmines as well. But it's one of those things where we want to win every week by a lot of points, not just, weeks 15 through 17 in those fantasy playoffs. So I know you're going to pull up some draft boards. And yeah, we did go heavy rookie on one, but at least those rookies, man, like we are fully expecting them to have pretty big early season.
Yeah, I mean, look,
also.
To be clear, we're not saying to not draft the rookies.
Yeah.
ADP, like we've ranked these players and we have values on them. And then if they are values based on the site you're drafting at, you want to draft them. Some of them are going to be veterans. Some of them are going to be rookies. Like I'll just go ahead. And so guys, we're going to kind of jump into another segment here that we're just going to call FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? It's just like any market dynamic. Like if you guys happen to trade stocks, whatever it is you do, anytime some little piece of news, right, can send things haywire. But there are certain things that in fantasy football that we find like that certain people really want to run away from. And so, or they want to run towards because they see it as being safe. And so we want to challenge some of those things. But Ian, I want to start with you. We are going to talk about some draft boards, but you've got number one on here and you talked about the quarterback and tight end run is happening. Like I see the Michael Scott, it's happening, and you're like, I need to draft one right now. So talk about this and why people might want to resist this urge, because they're going to be feeling fear and anxiety, and it may make them want to take that quarterback or tight end in the middle rounds. But I know you've thought a lot about and looked at the research of why you might not want to do that.
And look, this is why I think tier-based drafting makes more sense than just assuming that you are spot on correct with every single one of your rankings, okay? Like, again, we've been through this. I hope this is the year, Dwayne, that we are just top 200, just spot on. We're going to make a lot of money if that is going to be the case. But it's one of these things where, honestly, me, we're drafting different teams alongside Big John Legacy over here, the grinder of all grinders. Love my guy, John. And I thought John actually did a great job with his tight end, where it was a situation where he wanted, I think it was Tyler Warren or Mark Andrews, and he knew it was going to be a long way getting back to him. But he basically counted the teams, the tight ends, and said, okay, there's 6 or 7 tight ends I'm comfortable with. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get one of these guys. So instead of reaching on a player, he got himself, I believe, a still good running back or wide receiver. And lo and behold, who managed to make his way back to him? None other than Tucker Kraft. So again, it's one of these situations where I just think, particularly in Superflex land, this is one of the things that you really got to be wary of, because I know you don't want to get left in the dust. Okay. So I'm not saying you need to be ignoring these runs, but just really trying to literally read your board, see the guys between you and your next pick, how many quarterbacks do they have, how many tight ends do they have, and then be willing to, again, go ahead and just hopefully try to get one of those guys in your tier. So yeah, guess what? If there is one tight end left, if it's literally Tucker Kraft and then you feel bad about everyone else, go ahead and take them. But it's more so, Dwayne, when this run is happening, you still have several options. Don't be afraid just to zag a little bit, because when people are loading up on quarterbacks and tight ends, guess what? Running backs and wide receivers who wouldn't normally be there are now all of a sudden falling to you.
That's right. And you're getting values, especially guys, if you play in leagues where you're starting 3 wide receivers and 2 flex players, or two wide receivers, 2 flex, anywhere where starters are expanded. You really want to pay attention to this. And Ian's talked about the barbell approach many times. I think that's very accurate for the quarterback and the tight end positions. You're either taking one of the elite 4 that are dual threats, because we know they're money in the bank if they're not injured. Yeah. And there's really not a lock that's better than the dual threat elite quarterback. Like there's nothing that is more predictable year over year than what that position can do. So it's really nice to go ahead and gravitate to it. But what you don't want to do is then be like, well, I'll take Baker Mayfield in round 6. No, take another receiver, take another running back. You can go check out the draft strategy guide that we've got up over at FantasyLife.com. You can check it out under my author page. It's there for free. It's getting updated right now. Today I've been working on it. Tomorrow it'll drop. Have all the updates for everything this week. But it really does, it focuses on this idea of waiting on quarterback and on the tight ends if you don't get one early. And JJ, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, like I'm sure when you talk to your friends around this time of year, there's that fear that people have where they're 6 or 7 rounds in, quarterbacks start going, they look at their lineup and they're like, well, I have my 2 running backs and my 2 tight ends or my 2 wide receivers. I should go ahead and just get my quarterback now. And it's no, every single one of these redrafts we're in, bro, there is a quarterback that will be available in round 13 or later. And you're just like, how did that guy fall that far? We got Drake May in round 12 or 13 last night. I got Jordan Love in round 18, the draft before that, man. So not saying, again, you can necessarily plan all the way on that, but don't feel like you just need to fill up these onesie spots just because guys start taking them. They're usually, again, after those elite guys are off the board, is going to be more of a prolonged tier than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah, I think a great way to show this real quick, and I wasn't planning on it, but like just putting up our tier sheet that we're using in these drafts. And so what Ian is talking about, you're in round 7 and you see, well, I could get Baker Mayfield right here. I
Clear it over a little bit, Dwayne. It's cutting off the quarterbacks.
Oh, is it cutting them off? All right, my bad. Wow.
Slight technical difficulties.
Maybe I'll go minus. Can you see them now?
No, for some reason. Can you scroll over?
Not getting them. No, I'm scrolled all the way to the left.
You can make the same point with tight ends.
Yeah. So, I mean, but the thing with the quarterbacks, here's a way I could do it. We can be smart on the fly. I'll just insert a column.
There we go.
Left. Boom. Thinking on the fly. So, yeah. And so these, you can see, oh, there's gray and green. Well, the gray are the players that were already gone, and the green players are the guys that Ian and I got in the draft last night. And the perfect example here is you're looking at this tier. And if you feel differently about your tier, and let's say maybe you really think there's a line here after Bo Nix and Patrick Mahomes, Ian and I both agree there probably is a little mini tier if you wanted to draw it right there. Like it's Burrow and then it's Mahomes knowing what he's done, and then you got all these other guys. But the point being is we've got this long tier of guys, and we've put a lot of research into why these guys go into a similar tier. And so it's really leaving you open to not have to take Baker Mayfield. And the other thing you can do if you wait at the position, you could take two of these players. You could take Drake May and Caleb Williams. We've done it before. And if one of them doesn't hit, great. But if one of them does, great. They're both guys that could run for 500 yards and throw for over 4,000. We just want to pick the one that does it. JJ Zachariason did some great research on this. And he said that based on the research he's done, Ian, you're better off picking two of those quarterbacks later than taking that mid-round quarterback that had the touchdown spike last year. You're more likely to get a hit by taking the two guys later than taking the guy that did it last year. The other really cool thing, and if you guys haven't heard this one, JJ joined me last week. He does a ton of great research on historical ADP. It's one of my favorite. JJ does a lot of things I love, but that's one of my favorite things. The other thing he talked about was, to your point, those tight ends that people are taking in the middle rounds, there's really no point. There's no point to them. They are not winning your league. You don't really want to be drafting for that floor. And if I'll go back real quick to the Colson Loveland thing. If you take Loveland, I think you are drafting traits that a lot of tight ends later are not going to have, but you definitely want to draft a second one. You do want to come back and get somebody that can be your floor. But like Ian said, the same thing you have going on with these tiers. And so when you get into these long spots, right, it's like, don't force this one right here. And if all of these are available, just read the board and see when they start going, and then you grab yours. You let the board kind of read for you. So yeah,
and I thought Dwayne, like in our most recent draft, which is actually going to be kind of putting a condensed version on Friday's Fantasy Life show, probably already up if you guys are listening to us now. But I thought we did a good job talking through, why we were going to be pushing quarterbacks, because there were certain running backs and wide receivers who we really were cool with. I think Dylan Sampson was one of them. Bashal Tutin was one, where it's like, okay, there's only a couple more running backs here that we actually actively want on this team. Meanwhile, there's four quarterbacks that we'd be okay with, even if we have our preference on who the top one is going to be. Yeah. And then again, we were counting the teams. So basically when we took Rashid Shaheed, I believe it was.
Yep. In round 11.
Okay, no. It was Dylan Sampson, because we still needed a quarterback. And we were like, okay, should we go ahead and just lock in our Justin Fields? And we said, well, Drake May, Justin Fields, we're cool with either of those. We looked across the teams. We determined, hey, we got Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels. I think there's a Lamar Jackson drafter there. We were confident making a bet that, okay, we didn't think the elite onesie teams were going to go ahead and double dip that early. We thought that maybe one would go, but we were comfortable doing that because, again, we wanted Dylan Sampson. We were fine getting whoever was left. Again, got a little close there. We had Jared Goff go, so not perfect. But Dwayne, even in this situation, we discussed worst case, we get Trevor Lawrence and some of these other guys because they were still in that tier.
Yeah, we really did it twice. So if you look at it, it's coming back in round 12, guys. We're headed back towards pick 1. We were picking from pick 6. We had Christian McCaffrey, Trevion Henderson, Bajal Tutin on the team. Tutin is more of a, we hope he really turns into something later. But we need another player that can step into the lineup early in the season. And with Quinshon Judkins unsigned, there's also a chance that Dylan Sampson just carves out a major role and holds on to it all year. And to Ian's point, when you look to the left, you did have Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Bo Nix. Another guy already had Dak Prescott. And then he did go ahead and take Justin Fields, right? So he double tapped. Coming back, we did have the Jaden Daniels drafter double tap with Jared Goff, but that left May. And Ian and I were looking at our tier, to the point, the one that we showed you earlier, and we had Drake May, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence all there. And so that's what made us say, we're not going to get a running back like this one that we like next round, but we most likely are getting the quarterback. Now, I will tell you guys, we tried it again in round 14 with Will Shipley. And so we wanted to get like what we thought were one of the most underpriced handcuffs in fantasy today. And Will Shipley, we wanted to strengthen our running back room. And, again, kind of looking down there, you had the elite quarterback drafters. You had one that had already double tapped with Dak Prescott and Justin Fields. And we thought we had a chance to get Trevor Lawrence back. But we were also looked at it and we're like, man, if we don't, and it's CJ Stroud or it's Jordan Love, and we still go ahead and get Shipley here, we're okay with it. And so again, it worked out. We get Jordan Love. Don't get us wrong, guys. Lawrence was the one we wanted because we think he's got a higher rushing ceiling than what we get with Jordan Love. But Jordan Love is a guy that just 2 years ago was a fantasy quarterback that we loved quite a bit. So I think this was a really good example. And while we're talking drafts, like I'm just going to go ahead and scroll over because the next thing is, and it's going to sound like it's kind of like a contradiction to what we were just talking about earlier with the rookies, but it's not, because remember, we said, no, we want you to draft the rookies, guys. Just remember, don't think that because a guy's a veteran, he can't give you the late season surge that you need to win your fantasy league, because the way Ian started off the show, we're talking about a ball that is not round, that bounces weird ways. It's a constant car collisions. There's injuries. There's so much variance when we talk about football. But I put this tweet up, because we had posted another draft board that I'll put up here in a second. And this is essentially how we started it. And I said, if you leave the first 6 rounds of your fantasy draft with these players, which best describes how you feel about your fantasy football team? And guys, just so you know, this is a 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, and we get 2 flex players. This is a PPR format, 12 teams. We start with CeeDee Lamb. Brian Thomas Jr. falls back to us pretty good. We're liking that, right? In a full PPR. Then we go Omarion Hampton, Tetaroa McMillan in round 4, RJ Harvey in round 5, Emeka Egbuka in round 6. And 36% of the people said ecstatic, which honestly was higher than I thought it would be. This thing got 4,000 votes. Still got 52 minutes left. So 4,000 votes so far. 47% of folks said cautiously optimistic. And then we had 15% of drafters say they were scared. And then 2.6% of them said they were depressed. They would be depressed if this was their start in fantasy. So the reason I bring this up is it comes down really, guys, to the ADPs and where these players are going right now in fantasy drafts. And if we come over here, because there's one, we were just talking about Tet McMillan. Tet McMillan, for example, right now is pick 82 on ESPN. Guys.
Crime. It's a war crime.
Yes, I'm fine with Tet McMillan in round 4 or 5. Going at pick 82, like that's just insane. So you have to take into account like where you're getting to take the players. You can't just look at it and say, oh, you got rookies. RJ Harvey, who we just talked about, is pick 81.6 on ESPN. Travis Hunter is pick 80.8 on ESPN. Guys, these are massive edges. The rookies, and here's the thing you need to ask yourself. If you think that's too many rookies, what I want you to do is look at the list of veterans that are going around these rookies, and you tell me which ones you think you should be drafting. And then you honestly look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do they also hold potential downside like the rookies? And if you're honest with yourself, they do, because we see veterans in this range of fantasy drafts fail all the time. We see rookies fail, but we also see the veterans fail. So you got to really think through. I mean, you got Cooper Kupp, who we both like. But, I mean, Cooper Kupp, you may look at that and think that that's safe. It's not any more safe than Tet McMillan, guys. And I would argue Tet McMillan still has the higher ceiling, like if he has the true run out. I still think Cooper Kupp has a ceiling as well. But it's something that you got to think through, and you got to be okay with it when you're on the clock. And the later you get to take the rookies, I think, honestly, the bigger edge you're getting. But there's a reason that rookies have moved up on high stakes and mid stakes sites. There's a reason rookies have moved up and they go before these ESPN and Yahoo and sleeper prices on these other sites. The reason why is people have figured out that there's been too much value on the rookies over the last 3 to 4 years. And so people are drafting them earlier, and they should be. And here's the other thing I'll say, even on those sites, there's still room for value. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on, man. Again, there's different types of rookies out there, but the draft we did, 2 days ago, we've been
Yeah,
freaking
pull it
going
up.
nuts on these recently. Like, it's one of those things where, yes, we took Amarian Hampton, Tedero McMillan, RJ Harvey, Emeka Ibuka in a row, Colson Loveland, Bayshall Tootin a little bit after that. But just specifically with the guys we were taking in rounds 2 through 6, like Amarian Hampton, even if Najee is going to be able to be out there by week 1, I still think we all firmly expect Hampton to lead that backfield and make the most out of his opportunities. No more Adam Thielen in Carolina. I mean, seriously, Dwayne, let's get those target projections up into the 150s for T-Mac at this point. Again, absolutely no doubts about this dude being anything other than a week 1 starter. We've already discussed Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. Yes, Dobbins is going to be involved. He might even start. I would still be very surprised if we're not seeing around 15 combined carries.
I will say this, Ian,
like
at that pick, if you, as the drafter, let's say you've listened to what we're saying and you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm buying Hampton. I'm buying McMillan. You get to round 5 and you're like, okay, I'm having some anxiety here. Just take James Conner. It's fine. There's a good chance James Conner outscores RJ Harvey this year. Ian and I are not sitting here and saying that he won't. Okay. We took RJ Harvey in this one. And guys, what you have to understand why is he doesn't normally fall to this spot.
No.
We see James Conner creep into round 5 of these drafts. We don't see RJ Harvey get into these drafts. So the other thing you have to remember when we post some of these boards, we're playing against thousands of other teams. And so sometimes being able to build a team that other people normally wouldn't be able to build has to be part of your mindset. But if I was just playing straight up in a home league here, I could totally get the mindset of, okay, I just took 2 rookies in a row in rounds 3 and 4. I'm going to hit a little break tap here and I'm going to take James Conner in round 5. And then you feel even better about coming back to Ibuka in round 6. It's not in round 6. It's not going to bother you as much. So,
and hey,
it's flexible.
Fine. Same tier. But Dwayne, we both like Harvey more than Conner. We just do. So we're not going to get scared off of that just because we took a couple rookies before. Again, it's one of those. Right. What theorem is that? It's not a sunk cost necessarily, but it's like not letting. It's just not a factor that I think should influence other decisions. The fact I took rookies in rounds 3 and 4 shouldn't influence if I'm taking another rookie in round 5. I'm looking at my round 5. Obviously we want a running back there, and that's the point that matters there. The fact if it was a rookie or not, it's just not something I want to be considering.
The question you should be asking when you're taking the rookie is, do you want Emeka Ibuka or Chris Olave?
Yeah.
That's your only question. Those are the guys going in that range. And if you're going to tell me Emeka Ibuka's got questions because he's a rookie and Chris Godwin will eventually be back, boy, do I have something to tell you about Chris Olave. His quarterbacks could be worse than Justin Fields.
If you prefer Chris Olave to Emeka Ibuka, then okay, take Olave. Don't take Olave because you took rookies in rounds 2 through 5 for picks that don't matter.
You need to prefer Olave to Ibuka. And I think that there's some major holes in that argument, just as many as you could poke in Ibuka being a rookie that's eventually going to have Chris Godwin return to the lineup. So, and remember this, guys, like this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but ADP is a game. And sometimes you have to take the player with less certainty earlier. In this draft, for example, we took Colston Loveland. So now we're sitting in round 9. We have Omarion Hampton, a rookie. T-Mac, bud. Rookie. RJ Harvey, rookie. Emeka Ibuka, rookie. Rome Odunze, a second-year player. Brian Thomas Jr. up top, second-year player. Jordan Mason has been in the league a little bit. But we come back with another rookie in Colston Loveland. And some people will look at that and they'll be like, man, like I probably would have just taken Jake Ferguson. And I understand. Here's the thing, though. Like, you can take the player like Loveland, who has the traits that if he runs pure could actually be someone that could be the tight end 5. That doesn't mean you're done taking tight end. You can come back around later to get a guy that you think has a better floor. In our case, we've typically been after Chigo Okonkwo. We passed him one too many times here. He went down here at this 14 turn because we took 2 things that we thought had upside, and Loveland and Kincaid. I know a lot of you are out on Kincaid, but guys, he's still a first round pick. If he's healthy, he has a chance. But the point being, you have to play the game. It's the same thing with Bayshall Tootin here. If you don't take Bayshall Tootin in round 10 to get that potential late season upside that you're looking for in the rookie, you're not getting him. But at the same time, I can still draft another player like Najee Harris. I can still draft another player like Jerome Ford later in my draft. But I can't get the guy like Bajal Tootin. He's going to be harder to get. So you have to play the game of how do I get the best combinations that I want so that I have this roster construction I want, which is a mix of my guys that I know are my starters, the guys that I'm sitting here looking at on my bench going, oh my God, like if this goes right, my league mates are going to hate me. And then the guys that you're coming back with that you're like, okay, like this like gives me some kind of floor. Like Dameon Pierce is that example. Like he could be a starter for the Texans in week 1. Do we think, even if that happens, do we think Dameon Pierce becomes a running back 1 in fantasy? No, but we feel pretty good about him having a role out of the gate, so there's a lot of examples of that. But and my main point being there's an ADP game that we're playing. It's not just about taking the guy that's you're supposed to go at ADP. It's about figuring out how you build the right kind of a roster that you're going to really like in the end.
Yep. I'm going to leave this one up, Dwayne, for our next FUD, things that paralyze drafters that maybe shouldn't. Hey, guys, when you take Kenneth Walker in round 4, cool, great. You don't need to draft Zach freaking Charbonnet in round 7, all right? Especially if you are in one of these, like Dwayne said, tournaments where there are thousands and thousands of teams. Because guess what? I could be wrong. Dwayne, it's happened before. It could happen again, man. If Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet are simultaneously top 24 running backs, I will be absolutely shocked. I do not see that happening. I do not see Zach Charbonnet taking over for Kenneth Walker. I see Kenneth Walker either staying healthy and balling the hell out, or Kenneth Walker gets hurt, and then yes, Charbonnet will step into that role. Guess what? You have now used 2 of your top 7 picks, 2 top 100 picks on one scenario. And that's the problem, man. Okay. If you have Saquon Barkley and you want to take Will Shipley in round 12 when there's no other, running backs with standalone value and there's no wide receivers you care about, go right ahead. Also, if you're in a home league and Charbonnet's falling, okay, and you are able to get him around 9 or around 10, I can get a little bit more behind that. But just, again, not to overly pick on Team 11, but my God, man, like looking at this squad,
and it was a great start. Malik Neighbors, Nakua, you got the elite dual threat and Jaden Daniels, and then Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery. That's a little early on this site, but whatever. We've already talked about the positives, and he gets Rashee Rice. A guy that eventually will be in his lineup and be awesome. But when you look at this, you have to start 2 flex players, man. And Rashee Rice ain't going to be one of them for the first 6 weeks. And I'll promise you, you don't want Zach Charbonnet to be. The problem is what you said. You've made a bet really on one scenario. It's either Kenneth Walker is the starter or Zach Charbonnet is the starter. There's another scenario in the middle that is that they split time. And guess what? If that happens, you're going to hate this. Yeah. You're not going to want to start both of these guys. Do we think that the Seahawks are a juggernaut offense? Now, we like Clint Kubiak. We think there could be some things that go positively for him. Dude, you needed to take another wide receiver here. Like this is, and there were wide receivers on the board to be taken in round 7.
Zay Flowers, Ramadunze. Maybe I'm doing it the wrong way, but still.
Yeah, Debo went ahead of him, but still, okay. Juwan Jennings, Jacoby Myers, Josh Downs, Khalil Shakir. There's a lot of guys that he could have taken. Jaden Reed. And because again, you're not going to want to be flexing Charbonnet. And you're not flexing Rashee Rice. So right now, both of your flex spots are wide open, and that's going to be a problem. And so you're basically by the time Rashee Rice gets back, your team could just be in the tank. And like, that's the thing that you're trying to avoid. So again, not trying to overly pick on 11, but the Charbonnet pick, I don't like it. I don't like where Charbonnet is going, period. Guys, I don't understand it. Why is Charbonnet like steaming to round 7?
And he's fine, okay? But I remember last year, Dwayne, his first chance he got to be a handcuff, he done it in a major way. And people are like, good God, like, can we even trust him? And we said yes, because he's probably going to get 20 plus touches. What happened? Fell into the end zone a couple of times, and it was fun. But dude, like, I don't think Charbonnet is a special talent or anything. He's fine, and he gets a good workload. Like, that's cool, but we just don't see offenses enable 2 high-end running backs at the same time. It's only happened twice since like 2013 or something, where we've had multiple top 12 running backs in the same offense. Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram in 2017, and then Devon Achane and Mostert got there in 2023. Even that was a little bit influenced by those guys kind of going off when the other one was missing a little bit of time. So top 24, again, it happens a little bit more often, but still not not as much as wide receivers. Just again, handcuffing, I'm not saying it's a complete stay away, but if you're trying to shoot for the moon, guys, like the ideal scenario, and then if you're doing some of these big best ball tournaments as well, the problem with doing Walker and Charbonnet is someone out there is going to hit the right one, and then they're going to be spending a better pick where you, again, just handcuffed yourself. So handcuffs, prefer to have other ones, because then ideally you're hitting the stone cold nuts and you have the sixth starter, and then you have the other handcuff that needs to step in. So just, again, inside the top 80, 90, even I would say 100 picks, man, miss me with that.
All right, Ian, we've actually hit everything inside of an hour and 20 minutes. We somehow did that. Producer Swing's going to be happy with us. Chief of content, Dan Kaufman's probably going to give us, an attaboy. But I do want to give you a moment, because the last thing we had here was talking about playing the ADP game. Don't be afraid to diverge and build your team. We already talked about that. That was the Bajal, Tootin, the Colston leveling examples. Anything else, though, that you just want to get off your chest on this kind of a show here that's been bothering you? And if not, just talk to the people about what you got going on this week.
No, man, I love this. It's just fun to have, again, some long form. I remember, Dwain, when we were, initially getting together at a PFF, no one really told us what we could or couldn't do. So we get into these 2 or 3 hour shows that, again, we're just a lot of fun talking through stuff. And, it's refreshing to have that outlet. So love what you got going on here. And obviously had some great shows. And the intro, man, it's catchy. I thought you guys might go with the Poison Talk Dirty to Me tribute there, but certainly Jake and everyone else who helped out with that still did a very
Elias Mason as well. Jake Trowbridge and Elias Mason completely killed it on that intro. I totally agree.
Elias is so freaking talented. One of many behind the scenes guys at Fantasy Life that, again, absolutely love to be working with. So, no, man, I'm just excited to get into week one at a certain point, because we have reached the stage of the offseason where everything just seems to be, so set in stone and people know what's going on. So I think as much as I would love to be right about a lot of this stuff, man, it's going to come down to how quickly we are able to adjust with what is actually happening. So the good news is, Dwayne, we still will have an addition to this show, one very big outlet to get all of our thoughts out, and that will be Sunday night. So make sure you check out Dwayne and your boy. We're going to be going after Sunday Night Football this year, so I want to kind of give that a chance. And I just think, man, it'll help us, kind of just be fully prepared for it. Going to make the Monday morning wake up a little tougher for sure, but also, hopefully can get a good group of live viewers in there and give you guys, again, in my opinion, one of the best recap shows out there. So yeah, man, let's freaking get it. Let's have a great year. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, you can also check out the updated draft guide, which will be on the site on Friday. It will take all of I'm going to take everything into account of the news that we've gotten since the last week of preseason games, all the cuts, and then also all ADP movements. But I will still repopulate the grids that I gave you last week, which tells you how to draft an ESPN sleeper and Yahoo from each position, early, middle, or late. How the different options you can use to build those rosters, and you can kind of decide, hey, which one's really most comfortable for you. So we'll have that up on Friday, and like Ian said, we're not this Sunday, but the Sunday after, we will be hitting it. For the record, I did tell Ian, let's try it. If I'm not getting enough sleep, we might have to start by halftime. But yeah, I like the idea of giving that a shot. So Ian, man, really appreciate you coming on. You guys can find everything from Ian over at FantasyLife.com. If you're not already following Ian Hartitz, how can you not be? Everyone's already following Ian Hartitz, but it's Hartitz, Hartitz. Ian, appreciate you, man. Catch you next time.
Appreciate you. Good luck, everyone.